guys! I've mentioned on my channel quite a bit that I have struggled a lot with anxiety and depression, and yeah, I had a lot of problems with those, but I've never actually made a video just talking about it. So that's what I'm going to do today. I have always been a worrier. When we crossed the border when I was 5 years old, I saw a bunch of posters on the wall of missing children. And for months after that, I refused to go to my friends' houses. I would have them come to my house, but I just wouldn't want to go out. I wouldn't want to go places. And my mom said she just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me until I told her I was scared of being kidnapped. Once she told me, like, you're not going to be kidnapped, we live in a safe place, blah, 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 I was totally fine. I went to my friends' houses, but that was kind of the first time that my anxiety ever surfaced. When I was in grade 3, that's when my fear of throwing up first began to surface. Every single night I'd run to my parents' room and tell them I felt sick and I was scared I was going to throw up. And then every single night they'd tell me that I wasn't going to be sick and to go back to bed. I just slept with a bowl right beside my face because I was just so terrified. I started seeing a counselor and I did a Worry Dragons program. My phobia relatively went away after that and wasn't a problem, but where I do remember it being a problem is we used to have family movie nights every Friday, and I got so worried that I was going to see someone throw up in the movies that we were watching that I wouldn't watch the movies anymore, and I just stopped watching the movies. And if my parents wanted to have a family movie night, they'd have to screen the movie beforehand so that I would be okay to watch it. The other thing that I remember was whenever I was in public places or even with my family and someone started coughing, I just plugged my ears. Like, I couldn't listen to it. It made me super worried that they were going to be sick. So we used to go visit my Nana, and she was a big smoker, so she had a big smoker's pack. And obviously she was not getting sick, but I just remember like running away when she'd cough and just plugging my ears whenever she'd cough, just for years. My anxiety really started coming back around the time that I was 13. Just overall, it wasn't a very good time for our family. We live in Canada, but my grandparents, one side of my grandparents lived in Arkansas, and my papa was having a lot of health problems. So my mom was gone a lot, and when it comes to my anxiety, my mom has always been my biggest support. My mom was gone a lot. I was alone at home a lot. I was playing on a very, very competitive soccer team. In the winter, I think it was in December, I had my first panic attack at practice. And at the time, we didn't know what it was. Basically, I remember just warming up and just having a terrible stomach ache. When I started to get really dizzy, that was when okay, I need to sit down. And so I started walking off the field to where the parents were. And I just remember the ground just going like this. I couldn't see straight. I was just so dizzy and I just felt so sick. It was really scary. I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was gonna die. I didn't know what was going on. But I made it to the parents. I remember gagging and I think I actually threw up. I passed out and was just lying on the ground and actually got hypothermic because it was really cold out. It was the middle of winter and I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt for practice. And I don't really remember a ton after that until I was in the ambulance and warming up and calming down, but I just kind of went in and out of consciousness and no one knew what was happening. Everyone thought I was having a seizure or something. This is when my generalized anxiety started popping up and my phobia again. It was around exam time in January and I was really worried about my grades. I was worried about my papa and my mom being gone, and it was just a stressful time. I just remember staying up all night just worrying. And then when I was up all night, I started worrying that I was gonna be sick. I started worrying I was gonna throw up. That's when my anxiety started. And it just got worse and worse. I just started sleeping less and less, and I would just stay up all night worrying and super anxious. And so I told my parents this, and a few months later I started seeing my first counselor. And she did what she could, but I just kept going downhill. The night times were my worst nightmare. I started getting these really bad night terror or panic attack type things. I don't really know how to describe them because we really don't know what they were, but basically as I was drifting off to sleep, my parents would be in the room with me. They'd be trying to help me get to sleep. They'd be reading to me. They'd be trying to take my mind off of the anxiety and calming me down as I got more anxious. They just said as I'd be dozing off or right when I fell asleep, I just sit bolt upright and just be panicking. I'd just sit up and just be be completely in the middle of a panic attack, and I'd run to the bathroom super scared I was gonna throw up and just sit there. And nighttime panic attacks to this day are the most terrible thing I've ever experienced. I'd be just going to sleep and then I just would wake up in sheer terror and not know what was going on, and every instinct, every part of my body was just oh my goodness, something is wrong, you're going to be sick. And that just would happen anywhere from probably 2 to 4 times a night. As I was trying to go to sleep, I just wake up in this panic attack, and It'd take anywhere from like 5 minutes or like an hour to calm me down. Sometimes we just have to go for walks at like 2 or 3 a.m. just to like get out some of the energy. Eventually, like when my body was just so tired, I'd eventually be able to fall asleep and stay asleep for like 2 hours, and then it was time to get up. It was so bad. It was absolutely miserable. And my poor parents, the entire time, they were right there with me every single time. They were trying to calm me down, they were trying to distract me and just help me through it and help me try and sleep. And so they're, of course, like, they're super stressed, they're super worried, they're not sleeping. During the day, I just had really bad generalized anxiety, and everything made me anxious, and I started avoiding anything that could potentially trigger me just as a result of all the anxiety I was experiencing and not sleeping. I started getting depressed, and I got depression on top of everything. My generalized anxiety started as like my phobia. That was what started my anxiety. But then it just got so big that it was about everything and not just my phobia, even though my phobia was like the root of it, or like the biggest part of it. So I couldn't watch movies or videos, I couldn't hear movies or videos or radio or like TV shows or anything. Like, my parents had to put in earbuds when they were watching TV or things like that, because if I heard it, I'd get super anxious. I couldn't go in cars with other people, like do car rides with them. I basically couldn't be away from my parents for more than a few hours, and I couldn't be alone at night, and I couldn't be alone in the evenings, and I couldn't like go to movies. I stopped going out with friends. I couldn't go to sleepovers with my friends or on any public transport, like the bus, the ferry, the airplanes, or like school buses or trips with my class or anything, or go to any hospitals. I basically couldn't be outside if it was dark. I couldn't be downtown. I couldn't be in any city environment or in crowds or at a fair or carnival or around a lot of people, or in a situation where I felt trapped. So if like the classroom door was shut, or if no one was allowed to get up and go to the bathroom, or like in an exam setting. I started getting really bad performance anxiety and like presentations in class. Like, I could list these forever. And so I just have like random panic attacks in the day that I just couldn't control. Like, my mom and I would be driving in the car and I just started having a panic attack. Basically, the first counselor I was seeing, she eventually just, after like 6 months, she kind of just said like, you know, I've done what I can. Lydia needs more help than I can give her. She's doing everything right, we're doing everything we should be, but she's not getting better and I don't know why. So I started on some different medications, and I started seeing some different counselors, and some of the medications like just made me so much worse as opposed to better, or just didn't help. My depression started getting worse, and I just didn't have any way to cope with the anxiety. So I think towards the end of grade 9, I started turning to self-harm, and it was months building up. It was like this torture, because I knew it would help take away my anxiety and help make me feel better, but I also knew I shouldn't do it, and I also knew it was a really bad path to go down and really addictive, and that I really shouldn't, that's not something I should start. But it just got to the point where I was just so desperate for something that would help my anxiety that I ended up engaging in self-harm. And at the end of grade 9, that's when I started having some eating disorder problems. I think it was like maybe another coping mechanism. And also around that time, I quit my soccer team and I stepped down levels in soccer. I went down 2 or 3 levels because I just got so much anxiety about soccer, and it was a very demanding team. Like, there was every other weekend we were traveling. It was really hard for me to be on the bus with all the other girls. It was really hard for me to take the ferry and hard for me to stay in a hotel room. And I actually couldn't stay in the hotel room with the other girls. I had to stay in the room with my mom, even though we were supposed to stay with the other girls in the room. And I just remember one trip just going and just having a panic attack at Denny's and just playing so terribly and just being miserable, and I just couldn't do soccer at that level anymore because of my anxiety. So I stepped down in soccer. The summer after grade 9, before I started grade 10, all my friends were going to this summer camp, and I'd been feeling very lonely and very removed from my friends, and so everyone was going to this camp, and so I really wanted to go too. I wanted to have a good time, and all my friends were going, and I didn't want to be left out. And it was just like a last-ditch effort to remain connected with my friends and to like maintain those friendships. We met with the camp director before camp, and we were like, okay, we told him about my problems, we told him detail, we told him what I'd been struggling with, and we said, do you think it's a good idea for me to go to this camp? Will it be okay if I come? What supports can we put in place? And he's like, yes, like we can totally do it. We'll let our cabin leaders know everything. And like, in hindsight, yeah, I shouldn't have gone to that camp. Like, my anxiety was too high. Anyways, I ended up going to this camp, and my anxiety just got progressively worse over the first few days. One night I just woke up and I just started having a really bad panic attack, and they hadn't, I guess, seen a panic attack to the severity that I was having one, and they couldn't get a hold of my mom, who like knows my panic attacks the best. Basically, they thought it was a lot worse than normal. They thought I was having a seizure, something else was wrong, and they called 911, and I went away in an ambulance. And like I calmed down. I was done with the panic attack by the time I got to the hospital. Like they can't last super long. Your body like physically cannot do it. The nurse broke all confidentiality, and she told so many people what had happened, and she told them that I wasn't mentally stable enough to be at the camp and that I was choosing to go home, when in reality we came back the next morning and she kicked me out. I needed to go home. Like, I'm not denying that, but it was just the way in which it was done. Like, they broke all confidentiality, and then they told people I was choosing to leave when actually they were making me leave. Suddenly everyone knew about my panic attacks, but they thought I just wasn't mentally stable and I was choosing to go home and all these things. And I just walked into my cabin, and all my friends that had come to camp with just looked at me and then silently walked out the door and did not say a word to me. And that was just like the worst feeling in the world. It was like the ultimate like abandonment, I guess. And so I just like was crying, just like packed my bags and went home. That really put me in a big slump. I was just so depressed. I don't even remember half of that summer because I just spent it all in bed, depressed during the day and just so anxious at night, and I didn't do anything. Going into grade 10, I actually cut my school time in half. I couldn't do full days at school, so I only went to school for the mornings because I couldn't last the entire day at school. And I just remember a couple of times just like running to the counselor's office and just like having a panic attack there, and then like going back to class. Yeah, like school was really difficult for me, and by this time I'd really lost any really strong relationships I'd had at school, and I felt very alone and very like removed from other people, and no one could understand what I was going through. And like the few times I did try and reach out to people, I got really bad responses. It wasn't their fault, but it was just that they could not to any degree understand what I was going through. I felt very lonely at school, and I didn't really feel close to anyone. I didn't like my school. So going into grade 10, I cut my school time in half. And basically, I'd go to school in the mornings and then go home and just lay in bed all day. And I didn't do anything. I was just so depressed. I couldn't motivate myself to do anything. Around that time, I also started a new medication. I just reacted really badly to it. And going into like around that Christmas time and that December, November, January, like I actually started to get a bit suicidal. And I never had like a plan to act on anything or anything, but I just like was just getting so many thoughts like, I can't do this anymore, I can't cope with this anymore. This isn't a life that I want to live. My poor parents having to put up with this, they don't deserve this. And just like overall, just this is miserable and I can't do it anymore. I didn't tell anyone while I was having them. A month later, after I started getting those thoughts, I went off of that medication. Things kind of gradually started getting better. We don't know what it was. I went off of 2 different medications that I'd been on, and going off of those medications really helped me. Anxiety at night, my panic attacks went down, and instead of having like 2+ a night, I got like 1 a night, or maybe sometimes I had a rare night where I didn't have any, and that was just amazing. And like my generalized anxiety during the day started lessening, and I started having less frequent panic attacks. Instead of having like 2 panic attacks a day, I had like 1 panic attack a day and sometimes no panic attacks, and like things just started getting better. My anxiety started going down after going off of those medications. I still wasn't sleeping much, and I was still on quite a bit of medication, and I decided to switch schools because I didn't like my school, and it was making me a lot more depressed at school. I just wanted to go off of all my medication. I was still on quite a bit, and I'd just seen how much I'd improved when I'd just gone off of 2, and so we really gradually weaned me off of them. This was during the summer. I went through like almost withdrawal. Like I had just become really, really dependent on them. And so when I got off of them, it was like I had the flu. And for about 2 weeks, like I just did not sleep, and I just felt so sick. I had no appetite, and I was so dizzy, and it just felt like I had a really bad flu or something. But I did it. And I didn't go back on any other medication other than like more natural stuff, but I was off of any prescriptions. That honestly made such a huge difference. It wasn't the medication that was causing the anxiety, but it wasn't helping, and going off of it just really helped me. And so honestly, I'd say by the next Christmas, like by grade 11, like my generalized anxiety was gone. Like I was having no more panic attacks during the day. I just wasn't getting anxious at everything, and I was just calmer, and I could think clearly, body again, and that was just the best feeling in the world. I still had my phobia, so I still had a lot of anxiety around watching movies in case I saw someone throw up. I still had some nighttime anxiety because I was worried about throwing up at night, and I still had the occasional nighttime panic attack because that was really related to my phobia as opposed to the generalized anxiety. This part really overlaps with my eating disorder. I was not in a good place eating disorder wise, and I was going off to the hospital for my eating disorder. And so because of that, I still struggled with depression, a lot of depression. So the first time my phobia was ever really challenged was when I went to treatment for my eating disorder, because the time that I was there, for some reason, there was quite a bit of throwing up, which there isn't normally, but there was when I was there. So that was really difficult to deal with, on top of trying to deal with my eating disorder. So with the psychiatrist there, I started doing exposure therapy, but I totally wouldn't do it fully. I wanted to do it, I knew I needed to, but I just it was just too hard. And so I made a bit of progress, but around about 4 months ago, I ended up stopping, just because it was too much to do with school and all the other stress I had going, and I just wasn't motivated to do it every single day. And that kind of leads to today. So really the only anxiety I have today is around my phobia. The only other anxiety I get is around school and schoolwork and grades in the future and everything, but honestly I'd call that more worrying, because that's not something that ever would give me a panic attack or anything. It's just really worrying, and I'm just a worrier in nature, so that's really not going to change. But I'm going away to university this fall. I've heard from a lot of people that there is a lot of throwing up in dorms because of all the drinking and partying and stuff. And I'm 100% not okay with that, because I still have this phobia. So theoretically this summer I'm going to be doing exposure therapy again and doing my best to just get over my phobia. That way when I go to school in the fall, I'll actually be able to do it and succeed and stay on campus, and I won't just have to come home because my anxiety and phobia is too severe and I can't handle my panic attacks. If you guys want to see an entire video just talking about phobias and what they are and how it feels, how to get better from them and anything, just let me know, because I'll definitely do that, because they're really widely misunderstood, and it's really hard to understand phobias if you haven't witnessed or experienced one for yourself. So I would definitely do that if you wanted. If you are struggling with anxiety or depression or self-harm or suicidality or anything, please just know you're not alone, and please know that things really can get better. I never thought things would get better. I didn't know how to make my anxiety go away. We tried everything, but eventually, I just started growing out of it and things just got better. And I'm in such a different place now with my anxiety. I'm just a different person. I was just so depressed and withdrawn and just continually anxious that I was just a shell of myself and just so miserable. But it really does get better, and things really do change. No matter what you're struggling with, please just keep pushing through it. Please keep fighting. I'm here cheering for you, and I truly believe that things can get better. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got something out of it. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.